and we still were able to relate. I do recall when we started the formal journey to the constitutional review process. It is His Excellency Dr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka who was able to lead the KANU team to negotiate with us and to address us in a manner that we could actually sit down and negotiate. You may not remember that, but that was the Bomas and Safari Park process. We have later worked closely on the same side. In 2002, when we came into government, where he became the Minister for Home Affairs at one stage, and I was Minister for Water at that time. We have worked well, and I know he's a people person and a great team member, team player. We've also worked together in opposition when we were both out of government. For the last 12 years, we have worked together, and more lately, in the 2022 presidential elections, we worked very closely, and after whatever transpired, we have continued to work together, and now we are together forming a broad coalition to transform the country. I would just want to conclude by saying that Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka is not just a diplomat because he has worked as one. He's a born diplomat, a great person to work with, and a person who is open and transparent in his work. And with those very many remarks, I want to call my friend, age mate, Dr. Mohisa Kitui, former Secretary General of UNCTAD, and a person who was a colleague minister. We were in college together, then in parliament together, then in government together, and now working together in the opposition. Yeah.
Asante sana. Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, friends of Kenya, Your Excellencies and honorable leaders of political parties, other friends of Dr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, ladies and gentlemen. Nice things have already been said about our host today. I'm not going to repeat those. I just want to say one or two little things that don't so much mark what he did, but why we miss such talent in public leadership in the country today. The first 10 years of my acquaintance with Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, he was a Minister of Government, and I was an opposition parliamentarian. The highest point of our discussions was during the crisis, the genocide in Rwanda, when I brought to Parliament a motion of adjournment to discuss the failure of African diplomacy and the failure of the world to stop the butcher of innocent civilians in that then sad place. Since then, we even got very, very closely together, because after the 2002 elections, I became Minister of Trade and Industry and was Foreign Minister. We were both members of Council of the East African Community. So for a very, very intense 3-4 years, we were intimately involved in negotiation of a common market, the customs union and common market for East Africa. I remember we were spending sleepless nights with Jakaya Kikwete and the Deputy Prime Minister of Uganda to beat the deadline, because there was that drive and desire for East African integration. But beyond that, he's known as Mr. Peace Builder for his work not just in Sudan, but also the Mbagathi process for peace building in Somalia. We mention these things not so much as a celebration of an icon of diplomacy, but as a sharp contrast to the sad situation in which we find ourselves today. Unfortunately, egos and guns have been bigger in supply than brains in South Sudan, and you see how the promise of the youngest African country has turned into disaster. The speech from South Sudan and the poorest victims of that fever in our country. Similarly, Sudan unravels as Khartoum becomes a no-go area. It pains those of us who have associated with peace building to know that we have a president who, sheerly for personal interest in bloody gold, is dragging Kenya into a crisis that is not our own. And he brings people to this territory to try to form a so-called shadow government, when those people have gained their reputation for slaughtering black people in Darfur and Zagawa. It's a disgrace that could never happen if Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka had his way, had a say in how Kenya runs its diplomacy. Similarly, we are passing through difficult times. Today, as I was coming, I heard the announcement of the Franco-German defense agreement. The first time that Europe has had to look at building a new architecture for defense because of rumbles across the Atlantic. It's a difficult times. But for us, we believe that friends of Kenya will still have the attention to support our democratic project. They could still stand with the efforts of people like Kalonzo Musyoka. Traditionally, the struggle for Kenya's democracy has been watered by the principled statement of the diplomatic community that we stand for what is good for the country, without fear of intimidation, without being blackmailed, without pretending to hail a king as having the best clothes when you can see that the king is naked. Sorry, it's not my day. I just want to say we contrast what we have heard and what is existing in the Kenyan gene pool and the inadequate capacity, competence, and execution of diplomatic duty that we witness in our country today. I am proud to be associated with Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, and thank you very much for making us share this important day in your life. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, the ambassadors, High Commissioners, and our distinguished guests, yes, allow me to acknowledge two people. We have the Ambassador of Cyprus with us here, and also the Senator for Kisii County, Senator Onyonga. I will now, it's now my humble pleasure to invite the Wiper Democratic Movement Chairman, Andrew Sunguli. Sunguli has been a close friend of His Excellency Dr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. They have been together in politics together, and he wants to make a few remarks.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I happen not to have the kind of credentials that have been read out here. Actually, my only political credential is that I was the running mate to Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka in what turned out to be the shortest presidential race in Kenya's history. I think it lasted 3 weeks to be exact, but we enjoyed it. And it's not so easy speaking in a crowd like this that has diplomats. I do not know exactly which language to speak because I'm told diplomats speak many languages, including double speak. But I'll try. It's a great honor to have been associated with Dr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka and to realize that he is actually celebrating 40 years in politics. And I don't know whether you understand what that means. There is a common joke that used to run, and it was in the form of a question. What does a politician and a diaper have in common? And the answer is that both of them should be changed regularly, and for the same reason, and the reason that it gets soiled. So to have survived 40 years without the need to be changed tells you that he has outlived many diapers and he hasn't soiled himself in politics. I think that alone is what makes us celebrate Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka today. And combined, of course, with his politics, with his diplomacy, which, as you all have been told, especially by Mheshimiwa Martha Karua, that his diplomacy is not career diplomacy. It's a living diplomacy. He is a living diplomat. In fact, a few decades ago, the late Mwai Kibaki was popularly referred to as the gentleman of Kenya's politics. And I would dare say, without doubt or equivocation, that the heir to that title as a gentleman of Kenya's politics is Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. Of course, with a rider. You know, the word gentleman, for those of you who think gentleman means you can be pushed around, I would like to add a rider that even a gentleman is only 50% gentle. The rest is man. So be careful. You should not try and push him. Don't try and push him too hard. But 40 years, to me, is 40 years of Kenya's political history, and you know where we stand today. So without saying too much, I just want to say, Mheshimiwa Kalonzo, congratulations. But your biggest diplomatic duty lies ahead. In my view, the building of a people's coalition is going to require the summoning of all the diplomatic skills that you have acquired in your life. So you are going to be crucial, and your diplomatic skills are going to be needed in the building of that people's coalition. And so without much ado, I would like to ask that we all fill up our glasses, because I want to propose a toast. I want to propose a toast. Just fill up your glasses with whatever you are drinking, and if somebody would also hand me one, non-alcoholic, to be precise. So, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, I want to propose a toast. And this toast is a toast for long life and good health and greater victories ahead for His Excellency Dr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. Let's toast to his long life and to greater success. Pongezi sana, pongezi sana. At this juncture, I think I'll hand over to the MC and you can.
Your Excellency.
Andera, sauti kwa hii mic.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, we have reached the climax of today's function. We are celebrating 40 years of diplomacy and the political journey of His Excellency Dr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. Dr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, you may have seen from the documentary and the CV, has been the Vice President of this country for 5 years, from 2008 to 2013. He has been a minister in 5 different ministries. He was once a Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. He was also a Minister for Education and Human Resource Development. He was also a Minister for Tourism and Information. He was also a Minister for Environment and Natural Resources, and he was also a Minister of Home Affairs in this country, Kenya. He was also a Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. Previously, he had served as an Assistant Minister for Public Works. He is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and a senior counsel. He has several honorary degrees from China, from America, and also from here in Kenya. He is a distinguished lawyer with a master's degree from the University of Nairobi. His career spans for more than 40 years, and it is now my humble pleasure to invite the keynote speaker, His Excellency Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, to address the gathering. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, the ambassadors and high commissioners, it's okay. My colleagues in the People's Coalition, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, this is meant to be a stress-free occasion. So just shake around and say, this is no serious business. And just greet the person next to you, because I think you should. If there's somebody you don't know, please don't leave. Your Excellency, the Australian High Commissioner just met Philip Kisia and Dr. Farouk Chowdhury, my friend, the High Commissioner of Cyprus, call it Kypros. I greeted him, Kalispera. That's like my second country, and thank you, Your Eminence, for coming. Thank you all. These are my reflections. Of course, they can't be exhaustive. But before I do make a few remarks in that regard, I just received a telephone call from Fred Matiang'i. He was supposed to be here, and our brother Senator Richard Onyonka, are you still there? Senator Richard, he's right there. Please come so people see this tall, kissy man. There's something trending in the social media. Remember that speech. And it was amazing. Thank you, Richard, for being here. Our brother Fred has asked you to be here because he's on a long call with the World Bank in Washington. He's still out there until later in the year. And our friend Rigathi Gachagua could be on the way. And so let me start also by apologizing. In fact, we have my sister Sally Kosgei's name on the printed list, printed program. I was meant to have gone to have tea with her before coming here. And I think my team were very, very excited that Dr. Sally Kosgei, who has worked for me for longest in the world of diplomacy, would have wanted to be here. And I'm sure after this, I'm going for my cup of tea with Sally. So as I listened to my colleagues and friends, I was wondering whether they are talking about me, actually. Yeah, look at you. Were you really talking about me? A guy from Muna in Sekuru. After Wamonyoro last Sunday, we all decided the next stop should be Sekuru. There's a village called Muna. And Muna actually means when you get to Muna, you get completely helped. You turned around. Your fortunes turned around. It's always nice to hear positive feedback from friends and colleagues, and I truly well appreciate it. I'm thrilled to see all of you here tonight. You've endured both Nairobi's traffic and weather. Nairobi weather is becoming like British weather. You meet a British man, they ask you, how is the weather today? Nairobi weather is becoming pretty much like the British weather. Thank you for trying, and you've all made it. That's your decision to join me this evening. Speaks volumes. Your Excellencies, party leaders, members of Parliament, members of the 4th and 5th Estates, dear friends, colleagues, and family. A month ago, on April the 10th, I quietly marked 20 years of diplomacy and 40 years of political dialogue. You've seen, you've seen that. My head was full of good hair when it started. To my wife, Pauline, who is watching, thank you for being my life partner and my soulmate. You're the perfect description of that lady in Proverbs 31:25-28. She's clothed, I quote, with strength and dignity. She can love as the days to come, at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. My wife Pauline, those of you know, have been really hard working working at the central bank for so many years. She's now retired, but she makes sure, even from our sick bed, the young ones behave. I'll very shortly point out some of them to you. To you guys present, my sons and my daughters, Kennedy and Doreen. Where are you? Kennedy and Doreen? Out there. All right. Kevin, is Kevin in the house? We're supposed to get here. He has a big day on Saturday. He's getting wedded to Sharon. Not Victor, Victor Swanya, Sharon got married. But to Sharon. My daughter Damari and my son Martin. I don't know whether they are here. They must be trying to get here. Some of you remember that Damari got married in December to that wonderful young man from Kirinyaga, Martin Nyaga. And Klein, who has been jumping around here. Klein Mairu. Where's Klein? Yeah. You know, Klein, I want to say this, as I said before, I went to Parliament a bachelor. And I had a very, very difficult decision to make because I wanted to get married very quickly in 85. My sister, when I appeared before you, looked timid. I'm not quite sure whether I was married yet because I was not in Parliament. I was still a bachelor. So these young people have known just a political father. But balancing these things can be very difficult. When I made the decision to join elective politics 40 years ago, as I mentioned, it was not even 40 years because I lost in 1983 at the snap election, as you may have seen. And people thought I was like a mad young man. But then I'm reminded of the TikTok conversation we had a few days ago. If you hear somebody, a man or woman, saying, I'm not mad, please notice those are the first signs of mental illness. My armor at the time consisted of God's cloak, a law degree, my soon-to-be wife and life partner Pauline, and a burning desire to accomplish something worthwhile for my people. I stress my people because my world then was people of Kitui North. The previous speakers, as well as the documentary, have highlighted many facets of my diplomatic experience and political discussion. As a result, I will not belabor them any further. Nonetheless, I would like to thank everyone whose faith and conviction in my abilities propelled me to this incredible position. I will always be grateful for the privilege to serve for 28 years as Member of Parliament of Kitui North, as it then was, and Mwingi North, the longest serving after Presidents Daniel Arap Moi and Mwai Kibaki, as Minister in 5 substantial decades, as an Assistant Minister under the guidance of 2 great servants of our Republic, the late Honorable Ken Matiba and the late Honorable Justice Oletipis. As the youngest Deputy Speaker in Parliament, and of course subsequently, as we all know, as the 10th Vice President of our country. Your Excellencies, friends of Kenya, colleagues, the 4th and 5th estates, Kenya is currently at a crossroads, much like it was 5 years ago when I was first elected to Parliament. 40 years ago, I beg your pardon, when the repeal of Section 2A of the then existing Constitution of Kenya brought about a multi-party democracy. In 2002, when the NARC wave swept the ruling party, and the mother has just pointed out, I was the longest organizing secretary of KANU for 12 years. I wish my brother Gideon Moi was here. I don't think he must have been a toddler. From 59 years of power. KANU was in power for 59 years. And the late President Kibaki famously was quoted as saying, bringing down KANU was like cutting the famous Kikuyu Mugumo tree with a razor blade. It can't happen. But it happened. And in 2000, when that happened, Kenyans were regarded as the most optimistic people in the world. And in 2008, when the violence following the 2007 election set off, the most difficult events in post-independence Kenya, destabilizing and bringing to a standstill a nation state known until then as the oasis of peace in a turbulent region. Then diplomatic tact was required by the local and international political players of the times to get Kenya back on its track to its long visioned path to socio-economic prosperity, free from hunger and disease. Our sister Mother Karua again was there with a Kofi Annan-led peace process. The same is required, I dare say, now more than ever before. On June 25th, a day I call J25, Kenya's working class, young men and young women with pay stubs came to the streets in peaceful protest against the harsh Finance Bill 2024 and an impeached parliament. Actually, they did impeach the parliament. Kenya's youth are particularly concerned about the ruling elite's excesses, which included poor administration marked by tribalism, by nepotism, and rampant corruption. The tech-conscious, digitally savvy, and woke, quote-unquote, generation were astounded by leaders who loudly and at every opportunity said, I quote again, tighten up your belts. Kenya's coffers are empty, end of quote. While posting outrageously opulent lifestyles on social media and accruing more frequent flyer miles than road trips to their constituents. Using social media platforms, the likes of X, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, Telegram, and TikTok, they rallied behind the hashtag Reject Finance Bill 2024 and urged their parliamentary representatives to vote against the bill. It is my opinion that this tech-savvy and socially conscious youth irrevocably transformed the political, socio-economic discussion in our country forever. Their diplomatic tact of actively exercising their constitutional rights, specifically Articles 1 and 37 of Kenya's constitution, that is, and I want to quote under Article 1, Sub-Article 1, which states all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with this constitution, end of quote. And subsection 2 states that the people may exercise their sovereign power either directly or through their democratically elected representatives, end of quote. Further, under Article 37, every person has the right to peaceably and unarmed to assemble, to demonstrate, to picket, and to present petitions to public authorities. This call to action was keenly watched and followed by millions worldwide. It inspired many movements in Africa and around the world. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the unnecessary and disproportionate increment in the use of excessive force by Kenya's police service should be a concern to all of us. During the protests in 2023 and in 2024, over 125 young Kenyans lost their lives to police bullets. Up to date, no security officer has been charged and or prosecuted. The victims' families are yet to receive any form of justice. There is also a sharp increase in kidnappings and abductions. The brother, the Speaker, J.B. Muturi, and immediate former Minister for Public Service, Attorney General, a distinguished Kenyan, had to shout so that his dear son could be released. He kept on asking, how about those parents who were not as fortunate as he was? And their kids are still missing, some of them, even as we speak today. That 4 young men could be tracked just a few days ago and taken into custody by the security services because of the BBC Africa Eye documentary, Blood Parliament, clearly demonstrates increased authoritarianism in this country against anyone deemed to have a different view regardless of age. I urge the international community, and I want to use the plural here, we urge the international community here represented who honor their values and commitment to the promotion of universal respect for and observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms, as stated in the preamble to the UN Declaration of Human Rights, to join us in condemning these acts and demanding an immediate cessation of human rights abuses and systemic oppression. Your Excellencies, friends of Kenya, and members of the media, the reconstruction of the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission, IBC, is another major point of concern to us as the loyal opposition. The people.
On Christmas Eve 1953,
Yesterday,
in the quiet
I wrote
heart
to
of
President
Tsekuru, Mwingi in eastern Kenya, a boy was born.
Panel, which was responsible for recruiting candidates for the positions of chairperson
KANU National Organizing Secretary and Master of Ceremonies at the meeting that bowed to public and international pressure to reopen the door to multi-party democracy in December 1991, Kalonzo, also the then Deputy Speaker, actively participated in the repeal of Section 2A of the then Constitution of Kenya.
Minafuata yale wananchi wanasema because I believe that the power stems from the people.
Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime and, departing, leave behind us footprints in the sands of time. American writer Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote in his A Psalm of Life. This 1838 poem aptly applies to Kalonzo's inspirational determination to create the most of life for his country, her neighbors, and indeed Africa. It is the reason he is the most respected go-to diplomat in Africa. It was as Deputy Speaker, however, that Kalonzo began to hone his much-heralded gift for diplomacy. The international exposure during the Interparliamentary Union meetings taught him the art of resilience and the gift of dialogue. Kalonzo's first major international achievement was getting then Assistant Minister Joseph Muliro elected to the Interparliamentary Union IPU National Committee for Environment. Following that, he represented Kenya before a congressional hearing on Capitol Hill in the United States and defended the government after the 1992 ethnic clashes. This defense convinced President Moi, who appointed Kalonzo Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation after the 1992 multi-party elections. It was another feather in his cap because at 40 years old, he was Kenya's youngest ever holder of this most important ministerial portfolio. One of his most notable achievements as Foreign Affairs Minister was negotiating with the Bretton Woods institutions, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund, IMF, which resulted in the return of donor aid to the country. Kalonzo used all conventional and unconventional diplomatic means at his disposal to help resolve the Mozambique conflict and to become one of the architects of the East African Community's EAC revival when, through his personal touch and human relations, he persuaded President Moi and Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni to talk. Kalonzo also not only averted the relocation of the United Nations Environmental Programme, UNEP, from Nairobi, he succeeded in elevating the headquarters to the status of a United Nations Center, putting the Kenyan capital at par with New York and Geneva. Vice President Kalonzo's tireless effort, however, mediating the Sudan peace process, is widely considered one of his finest diplomatic achievements. The complex process began with the identification of three key issues: self-determination as a basic human right, the issue of marginalization of the people of Sudan, and the relationship between state and religion. Despite the breakthrough Machakos Protocol, there remained many pitfalls, betrayals, and frustrations. All Kalonzo's patience, skills, and tact were required over 10 years for any headway to be made. He helped the leaders from both sides overcome fear, suspicion, and mistrust. The peacemaker was visibly delighted to see his efforts bearing fruit when, on July 9, 2011, South Sudanese in their millions across the globe voted in a referendum leading to the birth of Africa's 54th independent country and the 193rd member